Everyone, so this will serve as your next topic pertaining to your semifinal. So this would be the first topic in the semifinal quarter. So we are now in the chapter 2 or unit 2, which is entitled Unpacking the Self. So the first lesson in the Unpacking the Self is lesson 1, which is the physical self. So we have main goals or objectives to be ponder in this lecture. Number 1 is to describe the physical self. 2. Examine the self as impacted by the body. 3. Explain how one's culture influences body image and self-esteem. 4. We will recognize the true meaning of beauty. And lastly, we construct a personal self. So meaning to say at the end of this or at the end of the topic, the student or you as my student will be learning what are the differences or the description of physical self, or how can we identify your physical self, or where does it came from. Okay, so let's start with identifying the definition of physical self. Of course, among many aspects of yourself that make up who you are and who you believe yourself to be is your physical self. So meaning to say, it is a tangible aspect of the person that can be directly observed and examined as we interact with our environment and fellow beings. So in other words, when we say the physical self, it refers to one's body. Okay? It is refers to your body, it is refers to one's body. So meaning to say, it is a description of your physical appearance. So believe it or not, who you are physically is important to many people. And individuals' physical characteristics, including one's face, body shape, and structure pertaining to height, weight, skin color, hair color, or even fitness, are often perceived primary. So what does it mean? It means that we usually judge the person pertaining to the physical feature. Diba? So meaning to say, it is very important for you to know your physical self or your physical appearance for this aspect. Kasi all of us or each one of the person can literally judge you by the means of your physical appearance. And one good concept of physical self is self-concept. So in the study of physical self, it is much more defined as a self-concept. Why? Because it is the totality of perception that each person has of themselves. So meaning to say, when we say self-concept, it is not only focused on emotional, spiritual, but hence it is much more focused also with the physical self. When we say perception, again, it is the way you see yourself. So meaning to say, by the description of your appearance, you can definitely define your or you can definitely describe it. So that is the meaning of self-concept. That is why self-concept is a connection, or there is a connection between self-concept to your physical self. Not only that, we also have self-esteem. Why? Because self-esteem usually has usually the reason why we can feel confident. So we can feel confident by the means of what? Of course, physical appearance. The way we look, if we are satisfied in our physical features before we go out, 'di ba? So diyan nagsisimula yung self-esteem mo. So for the definition of self-esteem, it is how you feel, okay? 'Di ba? It is how you feel about who you are as a person. It is often referred to as confidence. That's why I've said a while ago that physical self is much more have emphasis with your self-esteem, because here you can feel confident. If you look good, you can feel confident, 'di ba? For example, if you're not for today you are not you did not feel good, 'di ba mawawala yung confident mo, mahihiya ka kasi nga hindi maayos or hindi nasa ayos yung pagkatao mo sa araw na to, hindi siya yung sa nakasanayan mo na itsura mo. So that's why physical appearance is very important in having a confident, 'di ba? So it is also called as physical self-esteem or physical self-worth. So meaning to say, confident and self-esteem is also called with these two terms. It is a physical self-esteem or physical self-worth. It means that a person evaluation of their physical self, which includes evaluation of both the physical appearance and physical competencies. So meaning to say, that's why I've said a while ago that physical self is somewhat explains in or somewhat the reason why we have confidence, because we always look at ourselves, or we always look at our appearance each day. 'Di ba? Dapat kailangan maayos ako ngayong araw, dapat I look good. Kahit hindi naman maganda, or kahit hindi man, let's say, we have different uniqueness, 'di ba? We are unique. So, hindi naman natin masasabi that we are all beautiful, 'di ba? In physical appearance. So pero yung pagdadamit ng maayos, yung pag-aayos ng mukha ng kung paano mo siya gusto is makakadala yun. It can make you you can feel beautiful in that way. So that's why self-esteem is somewhat connected to physical self. And if you feel good in that time, your confidence will be boost, 'di ba? 'Di ba? So, meaning to say, you have confidence if you look good. You have confidence if you look beautiful, if you look handsome. So that's why physical self is somewhat related to these two terms, self-concept and self-esteem. Okay? So now let's move forward to do the types of physical self-perception profile, or in the abbreviation we have PSPP. So of course, among the contribution to our understanding of physical self, number one philosophers that is in there is Kenneth Fox. Kenneth actually developed a measurement tool for assessing the physical self, and he called it as a physical self perception profile. So in a physical self perception profile, it includes the following subscales. So these are the types of physical self perception profile. What are those? Number one is the sport competency, or pertaining to the sports. So here it is a perception of sport and athletic ability. So meaning to say, it is the ability to learn sport skills and confidence in sport environment. So that is sport competence. It is particularly on how you see the area of the sport. So it is particularly on being athletic, or your ability in that kind of area. It is also a perception of course, the sport. So sabi nga dito, or in other words, it is just the ability to learn sport skills and confidence in the sport environment. So that is sport competence. Number two, physical condition, or pertaining to condition. It is all about perception of physical condition. So what do you mean by this? When we say physical condition, it is pertaining to your stamina, your fitness, ability to maintain exercise, and confidence in the exercise and fitness setting. So when you say you can have a physical self if you do this if you do these practices in the physical condition, okay, it is much more focused on the stamina or the fitness of a person, and the ability to maintain an exercise, or to have exercise, and in that way you can have a confidence, diba? So this is particularly on exercise fitness setting. Okay, so that is physical condition. If sport competency is the ability of to learn sport skills, physical condition is all about your fitness, or it's all about the ability to maintain exercise, or it is all about, or in other words, it is all about fitness setting. Next, we have body attractiveness, or particularly on your body. So here it is perceived attractiveness of figure or physique. So what does it mean? It is the ability to maintain an attractive body and confidence in appearance. So meaning to say, when we say body attractiveness, is somewhat has a connection to physical condition. Why? Because in physical condition, this is much more on fitness setting. So how can you perceive, or how can you maintain a good body, or a healthy body, if you don't have a fitness setting? So it is somewhat related to one another. Then we have physical strength. It is all about your strength. So perceive strength, muscle, or development, or in other words, you can build confidence in requiring what situation that can boost your strength. Okay, then lastly, we have physical self-worth, or PSW. It is all about general feelings of happiness. So how can you or in other words, not only happiness. How can you get happiness if you are satisfied? So meaning to say, satisfaction, pride, respect, and confidence in the physical self. It is all about your physical self-worth, or PSW. Okay, so that would be the types of physical self-perception profile that given by Kenneth Fox. Okay, so now let's move forward on the physical self pertaining to how can we get the physical self, or the physical appearance that we have. So in other words, a person's physical self is not only limited to what can be seen by the naked eye, because beyond with that is our physical appearance. It is much more on biological and chemical processes that trigger one's transmission or transformation and development that is embodied in the concept of heredity. That's why we will be talking about the biological process pertaining to not only biological process, but hence we also be discussing the chemical process of your physical appearance, starting with the heredity. Of course, as we all know, the father of heredity, we have Gregor Mendel as a review. Heredity is very important for you to know where does your eyes came from, where does your physical appearance came from, your face, your good nose, your long nose, your good lips, diba? All of that can explains through heredity. Why? Because it refers to the transmission of traits like eye color, hair color, or skin color from parents to offspring. So as we all know that parents has that each individual has 46 chromosomes. It is by the division or the separation, or the separation between the 23 chromosome from the paternal side and to maternal side. So when the paternal and maternal side will combine, it will produce an offspring. And that offspring would carries what? 46 chromosomes. Okay? So here in heredity, as I've said a while ago, it is much more on eye color. It's much more on the traits of a person. So it's not literally only be specific on the eye color. All of your physics is can explain by heredity. So saan nanggaling yung height mo, bakit may ganyang color ang buhok. So all of that can explain with the heredity. That is the traits that you get from your parents. Okay? So so after the heredity, of course, how can we get the heredity? Of course, with the cell. So as I've said a while ago, that in a cell division, we have two ways. We have mitosis and meiosis. Mitosis is much more focused on your on your body cell, while meiosis, it is much more focused on the gametes. When we say gametes, it's much more it is literally, in other words, it is your egg cell and your sperm cell. So meaning in the process cell division, or in the process meiosis, there are two aspects that occurs. We have spermatogenesis and oogenesis. Spermatogenesis is the formation of the sperm, the maturity of the sperm. Next, we have oogenesis. It is a egg formation. So meaning to say, in meiosis, in the process meiosis, there are two eras. We have spermatogenesis for the sperm cell, and we have oogenesis for the egg cell. Okay? So inside every cell in the body, it has a secret code. Okay? It has a secret code that determines everything about you. So that is called DNA. So when we say DNA, it is a deoxyribonucleic acid. It's much more defined as the material that determines all your traits. So in a DNA, it composed of chemical bases. So it composed of chemical bases that can define your traits. That's why it is called as a secret code, because that code or that chemical basis can identify your specific traits. So in a DNA, we have a materials that can usually determine this one. But before that, as we all know, going back to your human anatomy, DNA is located to what? Central dogma of yours, the center of your, or the command center of your cell, and that would be on your nucleus use. Okay? And not only that, when we say DNA, it also called as the blueprint of the individual physical features. So meaning to say, you can identify each features that you have, traits that you have, because of the deoxyribonucleic acid, because that is your blueprint. Like in the architectural explanation, your house has its own blueprint, di ba? Your house has its own parang design or plan first before it will construct. So that is the same with the DNA. So when the DNA triggers the physical growth and maturation that our bodies go through from birth to adulthood. So maturation is basically unfolding of person inherit traits. So meaning to say DNA also has a impact to the maturation of each individual. So it is a completion of the growth of genetic characters within an organism. So meaning to say, not only with your maturation, we grow, particularly on the physical appearance, or particularly or the organs that we have internally, because of the DNA. So the traits that are made up of specific information are embodied with one's basic unit of heredity. So meaning to say, when we say basic unit of heredity, that is your genes. Okay? So each traits that we have in the DNA is called a gene. There is a gene there. Why? Or there's a gene in that in the DNA process, or there's a gene in particular DNA traits, because when we say gene, it is much more particularly, or it is a basic unit of heredity. It has, or it can explains the different traits. Okay? So that is genes. Next, we also have gametes. Gametes is a special type of a cell. When we say special type of a cell, it's much more identified as a sperm and egg cell. Okay? We also have the next, of course, gene, and all of this can be identified by the means of this term. And this is Punnett square. I know that you've already have a background with this with this topic, because Punnett square, it's already been discussed in your high school, diba? Right? So when we say Punnett square, going back to our definition, when we say Punnett square, it can be used as a tool to determine which traits will be expressed in the offspring of two parents. So it is much more literally an identification on how can we identify the traits of an individual. If the individual can get a blue eyes, or an offspring can get a brown eyes. So Punnett square can be the one who can be the reason on how we can identify each traits that you have. Why you can have a brown hair color, why you have a black hair color, why you have a blue eyes, why you have a brown eyes. We can identify all of that traits by Punnett square. So there are two terms pertaining to Punnett square. We have dominant traits. When we say dominant, it means that you will express these traits even if you only have one copy of the gene. When we say dominant, it is expressed by one copy of gene. Okay? Then, when we say recessive, pag sinabing recessive, it is more than two, it is more than one. Okay? One or two copy of gene. So that is the differences between the traits in Punnett square. We have dominant and recessive. Dominant, only one copy of gene. Recessive is it's all about copies of both one gene or two genes. So meaning recessive, it means that you will have both copies of gene. So where can we have these copies of gene? It came from the DNA, or it came from the cell of your, or the chromosomes of your mother and father. So meaning to say, in dominant you can have one copies of gene. So that is particularly in your mother. So in recessive, you can have both mother and father. Okay? So one good example of the Punnett square is this. So this is a good example of a Punnett square. So meaning to say, in creating a Punnett square, one has to list the gene of one parent vertically. Okay? So vertically, so you will be listing the one pair vertical on the left side, and and the genes of the other parent horizontally above the square. So we have vertically here. So the representation of the gene of your mother and father is capital B and small b. Okay? So meaning why there have a capital letter and lower letter. So meaning to say, when the representation of your gene, if it is capital letter, it is much more on dominant traits. If it is lowercase, it is much more defined as your recessive. Okay, so as I've said a while ago, in creating a Punnett square, one has to list gene of one parent vertically here, then one parent is in above of the square, and that would be, or horizontally above of the square, and that is here. So again, it is capital letter B, or the representation, sorry, or the representation of capital letter B is dominant, and the representation of capital letter, a lowercase letter, is recessive. Okay, so that is a good example. So you will just be copying the capital letter here B in the vertical parent offspring to the horizontal parent offspring. Copy that one, and you have a what? You have a capital B, capital 2B here in this area. Then you will just so on and so forth. You will just copy it. Okay, so that is how you create a Punnett square. Okay, so meaning to say, after you plot everything, that is a combination of the genes in each four section of the square to determine all possible gene combination that the child could have, assuming that both parents have one gene for brown eyes and one for blue eyes. Okay, so meaning to say, brown eyes is for dominant traits and blue eyes is for recessive. So what is the representation of this, or what is this, or the meaning of this calculation? So the means of this is, there are 25% chance that the baby will have two genes for brown eyes. Okay, two genes for brown eyes, because as you can see, we have a gene that is signifies is as dominant. Okay, here the capital 2 letters, that is dominant. So then a 50% chances that it will have one gene for brown and one for blue eyes, which means it would still have brown eyes because blue is recessive, and a 25% chance that it will inherit two genes for blue eyes. So as you can see, meron tayong dominant here na puro brown eyes. Meron tayo ding dalawang it's either brown and it's either blue, at meron din tayong blue one. Blue eyes lang kasi it's recessive, yung small letter B. Okay? So it's certainly possible for two brown-eyed parents to have blue-eyed children if both parent carries genes for both brown and blue eyes. There is 1 in 4 chances that a child will have a blue eyes. So that means that if the mother possesses a blue eyes, there are chances that in 4 offspring, merong isa na maka-inherit ng blue eyes. Okay? So, yan ang definition or meaning of this calculation in Punnett square. B stands for, capital letter B stands for dominant, and that would be brown eyes. Small letter B or lowercase letter b stands for blue eyes, and that would be recessive. Okay? So, next, let's go now in the cultural conception of the beauty. So we've already know what are those, or how can we identify our physical appearance by the biological process, which is heredity, gene, gametes, dominant, recessive, and Punnett square. So now let's move forward. What are those concepts in each culture? What are those concepts of beautiful, of beauty in each in each culture? Okay, so what seems beautiful for you, it may not be beautiful for others. So in that quotation, it's very understandable that what seems beautiful in your eyes is not beautiful, or not be beautiful in the other eyes. So let's start with this culture. It is the Masai tribe of Kenya. They define beautiful as having long, stretched earlobes and shaved heads. Di ba? Sa atin, kung makakita tayo dyan, we will bully it, lalo na pag it's women. Because defining beautiful here in our country is a perfect. Okay, perfection. Yan yung gusto nating ihambing sa pagiging maganda dito sa Pilipinas. But if we literally have in Kenya, they define beautiful as having long stretch earlobes and shaved heads. Okay? Women in Kenya use everything from elephant tusks to twigs to pierce and stretch their lobes to become more attractive. So, they usually use also long giraffe-like necks or the ultimate sign of beauty and female elegance to Kayan tribe in Burma. So, meaning to say, it's not only having um, a long stretch earlobes or shaved heads. It is much more also be emphasis in giraffe-like necks, yung cervical area nila. Pag long and stretch siya like giraffe, it defines as what? Beautiful or beauty. Okay? Then next, we also have the Asia parts, and one good example of that is in Japan. In Asian, white skin is a sign of affluence and attractiveness. So meaning to say, if your skin is white, so you are beautiful. That describes your beauty. In Japan, also they avoid the sun at all costs while whitening Asians normal in China and Thailand. Why? Because they avoid sun to avoid also what? To have a black skin, because according to them, white skin is a person that having or white skin is beautiful, or white skin can stand for beauty. Okay, so not only that, in Japan also they stick straight hair as the norm, and therefore the most beautiful hair texture is can define as beautiful, or we can describe her as beautiful. Okay, Japanese women have turned into pros at thermal condition and flat ironing to straighten their hair. So meaning to say, a very rebonded hair should be a one good qualification of beautiful in Japan. Okay, not only in Japan, we also have in Maori people of New Zealand. What is this? In Maori, of course, in Maori, tattoos are sacred rituals. It is called as tamako. So here in this tribe or in this country, Maori people can define beauty if they have tattoos. Okay, if they have tattoos like in the chin, lips, or in the in or blue, or your lips, they tattooed it as a blue one or color blue. They consider it as the most beautiful woman in the place. So that is in Maori people. Now it is also different in Western African, because in Western African they find women who are overweight to be the most beautiful. Here, as we can define here in Filipino culture, we can define beautiful, sabi ko nga, as a perfect creature. So if perfect, dapat maganda yung katawan, maganda hugis ng ilong, lahat-lahat. Pero in Western African, if overweight ka or mataba ka, you are a good example of a beautiful woman. Okay? So that is for Western African. And of course, in Iran, if us, here, lalo na ngayon, if we observe all of the people who actually have a surgery in like good surgery like rhinoplasty, it's very normal nowadays dito rin sa Filipino culture. Pero yung pinaka normal since day one, it is in the country called Iran. In Iran, rhinoplasty capital of the world. So meaning to say, nose job seems like a staple or an image of conscious. So that is in Iran. Actually, both men and women are proud to show off their procedure, which is considered as a sign of their social status and their path on the route to beauty. So meaning to say, they can define beauty if they undergo procedures or surgery. So then lastly, we also have India. In India naman, we have this what we call accessories. So nose rings, bindings, and henna is a good example that or this it is a good example that that the woman signifies what? Beauty. Okay? So according to them, or according to this country, they actually attract men if they what? Use accessories. Saan? Usually they have nose rings, they have the henna, that is in India. So meaning to say they can define beauty if you have nose rings and henna in your hands. So that is a good example of attract, or they can attract men's by the means of this. Okay? So that would be the cultural conception of beauty pertaining to different places. Okay? So if you have questions, clarifications, you can ask me in our GC. So I think this is the end of my discussion pertaining to the physical self. So I hope you understand it very well. So next week, probably I will be waiting, and I will be I am excited to hear your thoughts and presentation pertaining to the oral presentation that I pertaining to the topic that I gave to you. So good luck and God bless. So thank you so much, everyone. Again, if you have questions and clarifications, you can ask me in our GC.